this is the way it is, this is the way it was, that may be true in your story.
Yeah.
And you may find yourself repeating patterns of chaos that go all the way back to your littlest, youngest years because it feels familiar, and familiar feels comfortable, and we've mistaken comfortable for safe. But just because it's the way it is and it was, it does not mean it's the way it has to be and will be from here on out. You are allowed to become a new thing. And when you become a new thing, it's going to be the kind of change in your family tree. It will be a Sharpie mark slashing through your family tree, a before you and an after you. And the future yous and the yous that come after you, the generations to come, are all standing up somewhere, standing ovation style, cheering for you to get back up one more time, dust yourself off one more time, and keep climbing.
You're listening to the Big Ideas Podcast with Ashlee Ilg. Tune in for honest conversations as we pursue bold dreams, redefine what is possible, and empower the next generation to live big. You'll hear stories that prove over and over again that just because something wasn't a part of our plan doesn't mean it won't be used for our good. Whether you're already an entrepreneur, you dream of becoming one, or you're raising the next generation of entrepreneurs, this podcast is for you. There's no time to waste on your big ideas. So let's get started. Here's your host, Ashlee Ilg.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Big Ideas Podcast. I am so excited for this episode as we are just keeping this whole season rolling. And I couldn't think of a better way to just keep the momentum going with one of my just heroes, I guess you could say, in life to have on this podcast. And that is Mary Marantz. So welcome to the show, Mary.
Oh my gosh, Ashlee, you can't lead with that or I'm just going to cry right from the beginning. Oof.
Well, for those of you who probably do know Mary, but for those of you who do not, Mary is a New York Times bestselling author, tons of accolades. Go follow her, go look her up if you do not already. But what she means to me is, just for some context, I always like to share how I know the person that I'm interviewing. And it's just a really cool, thin thread, God, orchestrated plan of events, so to speak. And so I heard Mary speak at a writer's conference a couple years ago. She did not necessarily meet me, but I was like, I need to know more about her and what she does and all the things. And so I started following you, signed up for your email list and got all of your goodness there. And I was like, okay, she's the real deal. I was just drawn to you. And I think we have a lot in common personality wise and things like that. And so I'm like, she says the things that I couldn't quite articulate. And now I can put words to the thoughts. And so, signed up for your writing course last year, have been coached by you for now over a year as I'm working on my first book, went to your retreat, learned all the things. And so it's just like the enormity of this moment right now is not lost on me. Like, it's kind of one of those, I was telling my husband, it's one of these like pinch me moments. Like, I have this podcast because of you. And now you're looking at me on the screen for my podcast. And I'm like, whatever I can do to spread your message, on this platform, I'm just completely honored. And so without further ado, yes.
Ooh, I thought I was in trouble before. Oh my gosh.
But
Ooh,
it's just,
intro.
you say like, when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. And so personally, I knew I was a student that was ready to learn and ready to kind of take this next step. And so you showed up right at the right time. And so speaking of timing, your third book is about to be launched.
Yeah.
Actually, as this podcast comes out, it's like just a couple weeks away. So the book is called Underestimated, and it's all the goodness. And I don't want to steal the thunder. So I want you to kind of just talk us through, like, at its core, it names the fears that so many of us fear. Creative entrepreneurs, just women walking through life, figuring out all the things, trying to figure out all the things. And we get stuck on a lot of the same common things you've realized. And so I just want you to kind of just gush. I mean, I just kind of want to like turn my microphone off and let you just be like, this is why this message matters. Like, mic drop, we can go home now, like you've poured so much into this book. And so just overarching, I mean, we're going to dig deep, but like overarching, you name the fears, you break them down, you identify them, you take, you pull the curtain back, so to speak, on these lies. Why does that matter? Like, what do you just want to like slap us all across the face with, like, stop doing this,
Yeah.
So just kind of go with it. Yeah.
I think we'll kind of start, just for everybody who's listening, who they are meeting me for the first time, kind of like the elevator pitch version version of my story, just to get you up to speed, is that I grew up in a single wide trailer in very rural West Virginia in the 1980s. A sort of tin can of a single wide trailer, little lean-to shack with mismatched wood is the one-room addition, leaky ceiling, caved in, turned into a leaky floor, caved in, and the whole place smelled like mildew. And then you kind of fast forward from that scene, and I end up at Yale for law school, which is like, on the one hand, not something that is normally what we see with stories like that, but on the other is sort of also at the very same time an underdog trope we're very familiar with, right? We have watched that movie, we have read that book, this humble beginning to the Ivy League. And so I wanted to write Dirt, which was my first book, from the perspective of like, what happens if we go back and make peace with our past and have empathy for the people who came before, because we're looking at our stories through the lens of grace.
Yeah.
And so that was book one, Dirt. Book two is Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, which is about, now that we've made peace with our past, how do we actually go about giving up achieving for our worth? How do we stop trying to be, feeling like we have to be, more to the point, the most put together woman in every room we walk into, not because we want to make anybody else feel that way or because we would ever see ourselves that way, but because it feels like the bare minimum standard we have to hit just to be welcome in most rooms, just to be invited to most tables. And I was very much, Ashlee, like the gold star, A+ overachiever. Give me all the achievements and then I'll finally feel worthy. My achievements have to introduce me into every room and then I'll feel worthy person for most of my life. And so that's giving up achieving for our worth. Now we're ready for book three, which is, now that we've made peace with our past and given up achieving for our worth, how do we stop playing small on the good work that has been prepared for us in advance? And so, underestimated, you talked about fear and just like, ooh, like grab us and shake us. And that's ironic because that's kind of how this book came to be in the first place. As you mentioned, I do a lot of coaching for women who want to write books or speak from stages or run businesses. And I had just really started to notice that fear was attacking all of those women and myself in very predictable, repeatable, what became boring ways, because it was just such a limited arsenal that it was using on all of us. And it was infuriating because it was working. And it was like hitting it at almost like the exact same part in the process every time. Like, oh, you just committed in a big way to move forward on the dream, enter existential crisis.
Right.
So, and there's one particularly frustrating day where I just seen fear really winning more than I wanted it to, both in my life and in the women's lives that I was coaching. I kind of pulled out my phone and I didn't even like intro it at all. I just started saying, it's all been done. It's all been done better. It's all been done by somebody the world actually wants to pay attention to. I can't start until it's perfect. I can't start until I am perfect. I can't start until I know every single step in the blueprint. I can't start until I know the entire staircase. What if I start and the critics come? What if they say, who does she think she is? What if I start and I can't stay consistent with it? What if I don't have the bandwidth? What if I don't really matter? What if my voice doesn't really matter? What if it's already too late? And I just said, fear is not your friend. Fear is a liar. Fear is a really boring liar. Start anyway. Start now. And so that's kind of how the whole book came to be. And like you said, now the structure of the book is that chapter by chapter, I tackle and take down. This is the systematic takedown of fear we've all been waiting for. Each of these different faces that I find to be most common. Perfectionism, procrastination, people pleasing, self-sabotage, second guessing, imposter syndrome, not enough, overthinking, criticism, failure, and even success, 14 in total. And that's where we are now. A couple weeks away from that being out in the world.
It's so good. It's so good. And, it's funny too, because when I first started writing my book, so, you know this about me too, but, Andy and I have had several businesses now over the past 2 decades. And when I decided, I'm going to move forward on this dream, I'm going to write this book, and all of these same scenarios that I was not a stranger to showed up. And Andy was like, babe, how did you not think that this was going to be just like every other business? Like, you have to overcome this, just like we had to overcome it with, this, and this. And I'm like, but I just thought I could just show up and put words on a paper and everything would work out and I wouldn't be, attacked from all angles, for not trying to over dramatize it. But it is so interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting that, even in the times that we feel like we've overcome this before, like we've seen this before, we can see it in other people. Like I can see that you're dealing with this. Like, why can't you just get over it? And yet it attacks you in maybe a little bit different way. And you're like blindsided by it, and you're like, what? So I like to say that this book, well, I'm saying this for the first time, but maybe I'm going to like saying it, I'll say it again, but I'll have my own elevator pitch for your book, Mary.
I love it. That's how this book's
Yes. but it's like it needs its own warning label, because it's like
Dang.
if you like, see, and this is where I'm like speaking to myself. I'm not really trying to step on anybody else's toes,
Mm.
because I've done this where, like I was just saying, like I'm like I like to have an excuse of why I can't move forward. I like to play
Mm.
on the research riptide. I just didn't have a name for it before. I like to play
Yeah.
on the, what are other people going to think? What if they think I'm trying to show off? What if they think I've
Mhm.
got something to prove all of a sudden? What if, and so you like cling to these, you would never call them lies by fear before, but they're these little like comfort nuggets of like,
Mm.
I can negotiate, or I can justify why I'm not moving forward. So that's why I say this book needs a warning label, because if you don't really want to move forward on your dream, like do not read it,
Okay.
because you will,
Okay.
and so the good news, the flip side, flip the script, is if you do want to move forward, it will literally disassemble everything that you thought was even maybe remotely good or remotely justifiable to like not move forward. Now you're like, oh my gosh, Mary put a name on it, and not only a name on it, but she put this hugely visual picture that I can't ever not think about now.
Yes.
And I can't go around ignoring, like, now I know too much. Now I know what's at play here.
Wow.
And so I'm like, some people might not want to read this book. Like as I was reading, I'm like, oh, that was like my go-to. Let me just hang back a little longer. Now I'm like, shoot, she's called me out,
Oh, wow.
So
Okay, yeah. So,
yeah.
I really like. I hope that you have like that kind of written down or something, because I'm gonna need you after we hop off the call to say that to Instagram. I'm
Oh
gonna need
gosh,
that to happen.
that's so
Like
funny.
word for word,
Word for
clip
word.
that,
Okay.
whatever. No, that's not only like does that like make my entire year basically in the past. Let's be clear, year
Yeah.
of 12-hour days, 12 months of writing this bad boy, which was the heaviest lift of a book I've ever done.
Yeah.
But what is really incredible there and incredibly astute, Ashlee, is that you have picked up on the number one talking point that I have been sharing, and I did not send this to you or ask you to say that, that I've been talking about as I'm doing these episodes, and that is that the real backbone of the work of this book is that it is going to put words to, and not just words, but incredibly unexpected, visceral, visual pictures to all the different faces of fear. Because what I know from teaching photographers and doing courses in my previous career, what you saw in the writing course is I know with my teacher's heart that human beings were wired to learn by story, and they were wired to learn by very unexpected, visceral, visual metaphors. The greatest teacher on the planet taught in story
Yeah.
and metaphor. And when the people did not get the metaphor the first time, Jesus did not go, well, here's what I was doing there. Let me just
Yeah.
explain this. He was like, here's another metaphor.
Yeah.
And
Try to
so
keep up, guys. Try to keep up.
yeah. So for you to say, here's now this visual image in my head that both puts a name to it and it's a picture I can't ever forget, that's exactly the work that I'm doing,
Yeah.
because, fear is, as I was saying earlier, fear is a very boring guy.
Yeah.
Fear is not a creative guy. I have a theory that fear attacks creatives in particular because it is jealous that it itself is not creative at all. The only two gifts it has is throwing its voice so that it sounds like you, or you could catch it every time, and shape shifting just when you get one version of it under control, it shape shifts into something different. It's like doing battle with Mystique from X-Men. And so for me to come in and just basically kind of provide you like the flip book or the Facebook, when it was, I'm old enough where the Facebook was like a printed thing that you got when you
Yeah.
went to law school. Here are all the people in your class. And so fun story, I was actually at Yale when Facebook was invented at Harvard. And so we were among the first people to get it.
That's fun.
Anyway, that's a side point. But
Yeah.
yes, like I can provide you like, here's what it looks like when it's the research riptide. Here's the Edward Scissorhands problem. Here's the Oliver Twist problem. So I'm giving very, very visceral visual reminders or faces to fear, because I know humans are going to be able to remember them and recall them easier so they can catch fear much sooner. And I was on This Changes Everything podcast with Sarah Rice, and she was like, yeah, it's like in The Wizard of Oz, where it's the great and powerful, terrifying Oz that sends the cowardly lion running. But we pull back the curtain and it's just a snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm saying that in every episode and I'm giving you credit, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
We pull back the curtain and we take all the energy out of the room, all the power out of the room fear has.
Yeah.
So very, very
Yeah.
astute observation.
Well, very creative, incredible writing.
Thank you.
Hey friend, I wanted to take a quick pause to ask if you've taken the quiz yet to find out what type of dreamer are you. It's super important to discover what's working for you, but also some things that may be keeping you from really pursuing your greatest purpose. It takes just 2 minutes to find out if you're the skimboarder, the sunbather, the sandcastle builder, or the surfer babe. So jump over to dreamerquiz.com and be sure to share your results and tag me in it. Now back to the show. And speaking of, okay, so I don't know if anybody, well, I'm sure everybody's going to appreciate this, but I almost think your footnotes need the spotlight all on their own. I was literally like cackling, laughing on so many of your footnotes because I'm like, these are hilarious. Like they need their own book almost. I mean,
Nice.
they're just so witty and they're just like, it's like you're deep diving into like, prefrontal cortex and blah, 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 all these like, you're using all your brain power to like really grasp what you're saying in the actual chapter. And then you get this little footnote and it's like this little like, yes, actually that was a reference. You're welcome, or whatever. And it's like these quirky little like add-ons, but it's like literally you can hear you saying it. And I know you talked about as you were putting this third book together with several of us, like this is like the most Mary book, which I mean, Dirt was your memoir. So it's obviously fully Mary. Slow growth equals strong roots, just continues the theme of the achiever and all of those. Two of my favorite books. This will clearly be a third favorite, but you've said like this third book, Underestimated, is like this fully encapsulated, like the spicy Mary and the, the perfect blend of like all the pieces. And I totally get that. And I think the footnotes are just a huge part of that. And so like there are these teeny tiny little italicized words at the bottom, but for those who will be reading this book, like, I mean, you're not going to miss them, but like, just know they're so good. Like there's
don't sleep on the footnotes.
Yeah, they're so good. There's so much personality in like this smallest little space, but I appreciate the attention to detail and like the not overlooking, like as a writer, and you always are looking for that extra little, what makes you different. Anybody, like you got to put a footnote, you got to give credit where you're, referencing things that other people have said or done or whatever. And so it was just a fun way to do it. And I'm like, that's just brilliant. It's just so fun. It adds so much to the book. I love them. Like, I just want to go back and just read the footnotes again. I probably will.
That.
Yeah.
So yeah, this book has like both endnotes, which are like all the proper citations, and then the footnotes, which are just like my little asides.
Oh, okay.
The character, the fourth wall.
Yes.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of notes, and there's like hundreds of endnotes, but then there's hundreds of probably like 100 footnotes, and they're just like that's just like straight up Mary humor. And I love that you also said that because Brittany Bruce. I think Brittany Bruce. She had said to me, I did calls with some of my coaching girls, which Ashlee is one and Brittany's another. And Brittany was the one who said to me, or it was either Brittany or Kristen, they were on the same call, said to me, Kristen Hallinan, this book is like your Eras tour. Like we're bringing in all the different pieces of Mary. There's this really like sharp-edged humor that most people either know me as like super sweet or like super deep and like emotional. And both of those are there, but so is this like really sharp-edged humor.
Yeah.
The science and just like really high on both IQ and EQ.
Yeah.
John Acuff in his endorsement said this is the best of what happens when IQ meets EQ. And it's got like we're gonna cry, we're gonna laugh, we're gonna think.
Yes.
And it's just 100% Mary. 100%.
Yeah. It's so good. All right. Well, let's dig into a couple of like the big topics that I know jumped out for me. And I know you've been talking about them on a lot of podcasts everywhere. And so I don't want to pick the same things everyone else is picking. And so I picked kind of the things that jumped out at me personally. So, obviously chapter 7, where you did mention my name, but that's not why it jumped out at me. But I have a feeling I contributed to that chapter because it's such a big topic for me. And chapter 7 is overthinking is an orange safety cone orange safety cone. And so, I love how you said like at its core, overthinking is the fear of the unknown. And for anyone who's been listening to this podcast for the last, dozen episodes or so, this is sort of this idea that, stepping into the unknown, trusting that, God's ahead of you. Like he's not calling you to something that's, well, I don't want to say crazy because it is, sometimes they are crazy. And we've been sharing these stories of, you thought life was going to look one way and then bam, it looks a completely different way. And so I think a lot of us can get stuck, for me, for sure, in that overthinking And maybe it is one of the more easily justifiable ones. I'm not sure, because you're kind of stuck in your own head, and when you're stuck in your own head, you literally can't get out, and so you
Mhm.
need somebody to kind of pull you out and be like, this is, that research ribtide you talked about it and all of that. And so maybe just kind of dig into that a little bit about where does overthinking leave us,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you want to share sort of that switch and that shift of how we overcome that.
Yeah, for sure. So that chapter starts off with a comparison that I was really proud of when it came to me, and I kind of had to like really think through and go, okay, wait, is this actually what is happening? And so bouncing back just a little bit, chapter 4 is second guessing is a missing handbook, and it's for all of us who feel like we never got the handbook for life
Mm,
growing up when we were little, and we feel like we've been playing catch up the rest of our lives, and we never can trust ourselves that no matter what decision we choose, it will be the wrong one. We believe that the choice that there's a right and wrong answer, and no matter what we choose, it will be wrong because it's us.
yeah.
And so in chapter 7, we kind of full circle to that where I say, if second guessing is a missing handbook, overthinking is a missing blueprint.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is second guessing is internal. It's all of our gaps in knowledge, our wisdom, our, lack of info, like our like just generally about how the world works, like our understanding of the laws of the universe and how to win at life.
yeah.
And then the missing blueprint is something external. This is sort of the step by step, perfect color coded, little Roman numeral double I's, all the way down to like the
Mhm.
little double I's, laying out exactly how to do this dream in particular. And so I said, we second guess ourselves, we overthink the dream, right? And so,
Yeah.
I said, like, you could have had the best handbook for life growing up when you were little. Your entire future could have been laid out in front of you like one bright bedazzling blue sky. The bright blue of the stratosphere might be the only upper limit. It was better than that in the book, but something like that. And you still don't know how to walk into NASA tomorrow and build a rocket ship. And so many of us are going, well, if somebody would just show me,
Yeah.
if somebody would just tell me how to do this, like I'm a doer. I'm not a overthink person. I'm not like a procrastination person. I just need to
Right.
know how to do it. But then somebody does come along and calls us on our bluff, and they do lay it out for us in proper Roman numerical form. And then like a Jodie Foster panic door, worthy slam shut, we go, just kidding.
Yeah.
This all sounds like too much right now. I should wait until I have a slower season. I should responsible my way right back away from the ledge. And we start to lay out those orange safety cones of excuses. Wait till the kids are back in school or out of school. Wait till the spring, the summer, the fall. There's just too much going on at work right now. And Ashlee, that is really what overthinking is trying to do. It is trying to get us to think our way into the problem so hard that we actually find ourselves overwhelmed. And when we are overwhelmed, we shut down and we cease moving forward
Yeah.
altogether. And that is actually science. That is what our brains do to self-protect. So just to kind of give you a little taste of some of the science,
Yeah.
if you've ever found yourself really stuck in the problem, really overthinking something, you have writer's block is the classic example,
Yeah.
and you feel like you're kind of banging your head up against a brick wall, and there's just like all this existential angst in the world because it kind of gets piled up right behind your forehead.
Yeah.
It feels like you're trying to sneeze through your forehead. There's a part in the book where I say
Yeah.
I imagine the little prefrontal cortex with its little like white
Yeah.
gloves and little white boots like the red M&M stomping its feet going,
Yeah.
like I'm melting down,
Yeah.
having a full-blown temper tantrum. When that happens, this byproduct that is, sort of a byproduct that's produced from neurons firing, something like that, called glutamate, actually starts to build up, and it can reach toxic levels. Scientists for years thought that we would switch from really big, hard problems to little ones because our brain was kind of creating like an illusion to make it okay for us to switch to the, more instant gratification activity.
Mm,
But as of like 2021, 2022, scientists in Oxford actually discovered that it is switching. It is doing that, but it's doing it for a much more crucial function, which is to
Yeah.
preserve brain functioning.
Yeah.
That level of glutamate would actually start to cause damage. And so we are wired when it gets too hard to switch to something easier. That's science. That's actually happening on our behalf
Yeah.
because our brain is kind of wired to survive, not thrive, as Britt Frank says. And so what's also interesting in that chapter is something called Bayesian brain theory, which is also called predictive brain theory. And what that says is that your brain is actually an incredible prediction machine. Like take this thing to Vegas, let it, count the cards and stack the odds, baby. Like it's that good of a prediction machine. It knows how well you will do at something before you even try. And it is
Mm,
basing that on all of the data and the historical data and information that
Yeah.
it has to operate from.
Yeah.
And so if it predicts writing the book is going to be too hard, it's going to downshift you and switch you to something that it does think you're going to be able to do really easily.
Mm.
And so ironically, we can only feed our brain new data to change those models, those
Yeah.
prediction models, by doing, kind of starting small and building up little hard things, bigger hard things, the biggest hard things, so that it has a different track record of data to draw from.
Yeah.
So it can go, oh, we do actually do hard things and we do okay.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my take on overthinking.
Yeah. And and I know why that chapter spoke to me so much, because as I was reading that, I was like, oh my gosh, I do, in the writer's block, or, in working out some solution for any of our other companies, and Andy and I would just be like, oh, I don't know. I've done everything I can do. I don't know what else to do next. Outside of, obviously we're praying too, but in terms of like physically on a practical level, like what can we do? We go for a walk. We go rearrange the living room furniture. I go swing my kids in the backyard, or go put my laundry away, or something that's just completely like, it's a small win. And then it just gives my brain a chance to kind of download a little bit, get that M&M guy from running across my forehead, And right. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's totally, I could totally understand that. It was so good.
Mm-hmm. And when you do that, by the way, when you go on that walk, or you do some stretching, or you play with your kids, my friend Allie Fallon, who I quote in the book, she says, when you think limbic, meaning the limbic brain, the limbic system, think limbs.
Yeah.
And so those kinds of activities, walking is left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And you're kind of like switching between, sides of your brains. And it helps you to shift out of that problem solving center of your brain that kind of gets just into like temper tantrum mode, into the more creative limbic brain.
Yeah.
And it allows those dots to connect that haven't quite been connected before. And that's why you get your best ideas in the shower, or on a walk, or while you're pushing your kids on the swing set.
Yeah. It was so good. I was like, that's why that works. And that's why that happens. It was so good. Right. And I loved how you had sort of like this little chart where it was like, if you kind of go down like the danger of the overthinking, right? Like you go down the research, and then you're, oh, well, looks like a lot of people are doing this. Looks like they're all doing it really well. So then you hit comparison, and then you had oversaturation. Like, oh, there's so much about this already. Like, why am I even thinking about adding to this? And then you have defeated, where you're just like, well, everyone's, like you said at the very beginning, everyone's already doing this. They're obviously doing it better than me. Are they ever actually going to hear me talk about, like, does it even matter if I add to this? And then the final step is quit. And it's a very predictable progress, chart, if we don't recognize it as it's starting. Right. And we say, oh my gosh, I'm being pulled into the research riptide. I need to go a full 90 degrees and stop playing nice with this, this lie. And so, yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite chapters.
Yeah. Me too. Yes, Justin Marantz gets credit for coining the phrase. Like we were in the car last April driving to a conference. I handed him the rough draft of this, and I was like, I know that there's this part I want to write, and I was like describing it to him of like you get like swept away, and I was like, I know it's like a riptide, I think. And or maybe like, I don't even know, maybe he came up with the actual word riptide, but I was like, explaining, he was like, the research riptide, or I said research and he said riptide, or vice versa. But anyway, like it was just such the perfect visual, because it represents how we start off just doing our due diligence and like researching how you're supposed to do this thing, but we quickly get swept up in how everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, so I wanted to pick your brain. This might be just like a personal question. Like, I don't, it obviously deals with your book, but I'm like, I would love to know Mary's perspective and thoughts on this whole idea. You talk about over idealizing people. On one hand, we appreciate and we respect guidance, and we've always had mentorship as entrepreneurs. And, we did not pursue business ownership because we had all the answers. We knew we had to learn from people that had gone before us. And so all the respect, all the appreciation for, please show us the way, we trust your guidance and all of that. But when it turns into needing their permission to do something, that's when it, like those words on your page, it just kind of hit me. And I'm like, oh, it has crossed the line from respecting and appreciating guidance to now needing their permission. Yeah. So what is the danger? Like, how would you kind of dig into that? The danger of, yes, you don't want to be out on an island by yourself. Wisdom is using other people's experiences and learning from their mistakes. You're not wasting all your time and all of that. But at the same time, like, when does that cross over to not moving forward because you think you need everyone's permission?
Yeah, I think like a good way for us to think about this and to kind of put, some context to it for people listening who they haven't gotten to see that section yet. I think like what I would say is this is in chapter 5 and it's about, not enough is a blank space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's talking about the whole chapter starts off with me talking about I once pulled an all-nighter to pack for a 2-day trip, which is
Yeah.
like, how does that happen, right? But I'd put off packing till the last minute and then a snowstorm knocked out all the power and I was like packing by flashlight and it was January in a cold weather month, cold weather state. We were packing to go to Miami for a couple of days and like that's already a stressful scenario to go
Yeah.
from, winter to warm weather places and then to do it by flashlight. And so, it's setting up that this lifelong feeling I've had that no matter what I do, I'm going to show up wrong. That we were going on the trip with other people and I already knew they were going to be picking like the perfect outfits for travel and for the dinner and for the tournament and whatever. And it was just this sense that it goes back to no matter what I choose, I will choose wrong. And I think we all know it's not just about the clothes. It's this idea that we feel like no matter what we do, someone else will always show up better than us. They'll show up better in the kind of business that we're in. They would have never made this mistake or they would know exactly what to do. We feel like they would show up better doing, if there's already somebody doing it, they're doing it better. There's, the world already cares about them. And this idea of over idealizing other people is like it's beyond comparison. We all kind of deal with comparison. We're on social media and somebody gets that thing or somebody has that outfit or somebody's traveling to that place and there's that moment of like, oh, I want that, I want to do that, why them, why not me, whatever. Over idealizing is well beyond that, and it's when we start to ascribe perfect records to people who do not have them. Like we are just assuming everything they do is like planned out start to finish, never deviated from. They execute each step with precision and they always have perfect results.
Yeah.
And no matter what they touch, it turns to gold and they see success at every turn, right? And we feel like they never stumble, they never doubt themselves, they never feel like, oh, that was a lackluster outcome or what have you. And I have experienced people doing this to me. I have of course done it to other people. And it's one thing when I'm doing it to somebody else because I'm like, no, but like they really do. Like it just seems like everything they do like was planned out 6 months in advance. And they're just like, there's so much strategy and they're executing on everything perfectly. And then I hear somebody like ask me like, well, what was the strategy when you did this, and this? Because I know you, Mary, and you must have some strategy. I'm like, we just pulled that off at the last minute. I don't know what to tell you. Like there was no strategy there. That's not to say that there never was, but it is this idea. It's very disorienting when it starts to happen to you because it puts in a very clear picture how silly it is when we do it to other people. We put our leaders on pedestals. We ascribe perfect records and perfect outcomes to people who do not have them. And in doing so, we convince ourselves that any stumble and any setback and any disappointment means we're not meant to do it. And it's just not true. Every single person you're looking up to stumbles, starts over, has those like stutters and stops and start agains, disappointments, failures, setbacks, and then they just learn from them, they pivot and they move forward. The only difference is that they keep moving forward.
That is so good. Actually Andy and I recorded an episode just a couple weeks ago and finally he agreed to be on my podcast. And
come on,
I know. I'm like, can I please get on your calendar? I think I manage your calendar. Come on. But we actually did talk about that, from your context too, where one of my biggest determinations, that's not a word, one of my biggest goals in, talking about the entrepreneurship journey and just being in that space is the struggle is real, and never to like put on the rose-colored glasses because it does such a disservice to people who, and like myself with others, like I'm flipping it around now where you think, oh, well, because I'm going through a struggle, I must be doing this wrong. Or, they've all done it right. And so if I'm having a hard time, there must be something wrong with me or my business or my strategy or lack of strategy. And so, that was a topic that totally jumped out at me. I appreciate you. Yeah. I mean, it's not fair to do it. It's not healthy in either direction. Yeah.
And we also just never know, right? We never know what's really going on. Like if we want to take it to like a really, cynical or whatever place you want to call it, like I've been in business long enough, both in my previous photography career and now in the author world, to know that not everything is as it seems.
Yeah.
And the person who may feels like they're just like growing on Instagram, they may be buying followers, right? Like that's an easy example to give. Or, they're just, gosh, they're just churning out content. Well, they're using AI for everything, or
Yeah.
they're taking somebody else's content or whatever.
Yeah.
That can go into a whole bunch of other
Yeah.
conversations, I know. But my point being, usually if it looks a little too good to be true, at
Yeah.
least hold up the closer inspection glasses to see if it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Back to the Wizard of Oz example, right?
Yes, right.
Who is the Great Oz? Okay, so here's a question I have for you that so your law school professors would not approve of this question because I do not know the answer. So,
Yes. I love that. I love that reference. That's awesome.
So this could go either way, and because this is my podcast, maybe I'll edit it out if it doesn't go the way I want. But what I am learning is, well, and as you say this in your book too, but I am literally walking through this whole season of life where when you don't know how the story ends, it's just about to get really good. So I'm going to go on a ledge and ask you this question. So I remember, I'm pretty sure we were sitting in your living room at your retreat. And then I think a couple like subsequent like coaching calls or follow-up calls after that, over the last several months, as you were, still writing your book, this book, you made a statement. You're like, just wait till you hear what the mountain is. Like, just wait till you know what the mountain is. And I was like, so my brain immediately went into like I don't like surprises, right? Everybody knows that. And so I'm like, I need to know what the mountain is. I don't want to be caught off guard. I don't want to be the last one to know. I need to know what the mountain is. And so as soon as I got your, advanced copy of this book, I was like, I'm going to flip through to the end. I'm going to look for any hints in the chapter titles. I need to know what this mountain is. And so I will not reveal your final chapter and what the mountain is, but I have an additional proposition of what the mountain itself is made of.
Ooh, love this.
Yes. Okay.
I'm ready.
So I'm just going to throw it out there, and then I want you to be like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Or if you're like, you are so off base, go read it again. Like, however you need to respond. Or if you're like, it's interesting, maybe book 4. No, I'm just kidding.
That journey for you.
I love how your mind works at 2 a.m. Okay, so the idea is that the mountain itself is made up. So, and to give context, I don't actually think we've mentioned the like ongoing theme throughout your book that we are the person rolling this boulder up this mountain.
Yes.
And
it's for every person who's listening who has felt like, I don't know why, but everything I try to do feels like it's so much harder than it should be. And I just keep kind of pushing up against resistance, and it feels heavier than it should be. I feel like I'm, trying to sprint through molasses, and I blink at the very last minute. I lose my grip and I lose my way, and the boulder rolls back down the mountain. We keep starting over. We repeat the lesson until it's learned, only we never seem to learn it. If that's you, you are my people. You're in the right place.
Yeah. The book is for you. And there's parts of the book where you have like the scenic overlook. Like it's this whole metaphor of climbing a mountain, rolling a boulder up the mountain, what happens at each of these points, right? And so I was like, okay, well, what if the mountain itself is made up of all of our dreams, all of our goals, like all of our expectations that we have for ourselves? And I had this like picture in my mind of like, because I used to, I was climbing the corporate ladder for several years. And so there's always this idea and this metaphor of, you're climbing the corporate ladder. And then for those of us that have turned corporate to business, it's like all of a sudden I realized that my ladder was leaning on the wrong building. And so like this city skyscraper turned, Grand Canyon mountain. Well, Grand Canyon is the opposite mountain, but, big expanse. Clearly I don't live anywhere near any mountains. Huge expanse, huge mountain. So there's like this like symbolism between like the city skyscraper and now you're climbing this mountain. And so this mountain now, and maybe I love dreaming. I love believing in our dreams. I love like just asking God, like, give me something great, like show me my greatest dream, my greatest purpose, I have a download for it. Like, I just love it all. And so what if the mountain actually was made up of our own dreams, our own aspirations, our own expectations? And so as we are making this climb and we're hitting these roadblocks, these lies that are, over and over again, is our mountain actually growing taller every time we increase our capacity and we build greater trust with ourselves, as you talk about? And so this mountain never really has a peak, and it's like we just keep climbing. And in doing so, we like repeat these these lies show up differently, but like at a higher elevation next time, and it's like, oh, I've seen this before. I should be better at not procrastinating or not self-sabotaging or whatever. But in all, the mountain itself is like your greatest dreams, your greatest expectations, your purpose. So to like, I don't want to like over romanticize it, but like, and so we have to just keep overcoming these things to move forward. And what are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I love it with my whole puffy heart. I love it so much. It actually works really well because 3 things that I already kind of talk about in the book are that the boulder that we're pushing, like whoever asked us to push the boulder in the first place, and that's kind of like the heavy junk from our story we keep carrying with us. And in chapter 1, I reference this part in Dirt where I talk about the trailer I was in was sinking in a dream that I had, and I'm like trying to fill garbage bags with like all the musty sweaters, mildewy sweaters, and the ratty stuffed animals. And I heard a voice say, "There's still time for you. We can still get you out, but you have to be willing to lay that heavy junk down, lay that junk down." And so even from chapter 1, I'm talking to myself and talking to the reader about like, who asked us to push so hard in the first place? Who asked us to carry this heavy junk in the first place? So if the boulder is the junk from our story, and if I talk about that quote from Liz Bagwell, who's another one of my coaching ladies, who says that the resilience is what's pushing us up the mountain and fear is what's pushing us down, then I never address like what the mountain itself is made of. So I love this because it reminds me of a study that I read about once. I'm trying to remember if this was an actual study or if I just read about this in like a Dan Brown book. I think it was in a Dan Brown book, but I think it was referencing an actual study. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it was talking about how scientists had discovered that our thoughts have actual razor thin microscopic weight to them, and that individually you don't notice them. It's not a big deal, but like snowflakes, when you get a lot of them, it accumulates. It adds, it becomes a blizzard. And so this idea that like our dreams, all these dreams and these hopes that we have for our future and these things we feel like we're being called to, and every day that we, this thing I can't go a day without thinking about, that it could actually build in a similar way, snowflake style, on top of one another to become the mountain. And that as we always talk about new levels, new devils, new levels, new devils, that as we are actually going up the mountain, it itself is getting taller because we are getting stronger and we're reaching new elevations. I love all of this. I'm probably going to think about this for the next 47 hours or so. But it works really perfectly. Like if our jump is the boulder, then our dreams are the mountain. I love it. I love it.
Cool.
Cosign.
Love it.
And I also love how your brain works. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think when I read great writing, it always, like I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go right now. Like it just turns up all of those, all the creativity. Yeah.
Prime the pump.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would like you to kind of wrap this up, but we have plenty of time. So the final idea is, or the final topic, I guess I'd love for you to just kind of dig in, is from chapter 5, which again is the not enough is a blank space. And so I wrote this really big on a sign on my board after I read this, and it says, "You are allowed to become a new thing." And it it felt so good. It like washed over me. Yeah. And again, kind of on point with what this podcast season has been about, the last, dozen or so women that I've interviewed. It's kind of been this subtle theme of, when God calls you to just kind of full on 180-degree flip everything you thought it was going to be, or everything you thought you were or you were going to do, it's completely different. And so you are allowed to become a new thing. It was just so poetic in the most simple way. I would love for you to just maybe kind of wrap like a big bow around, what would you say who, any listener who is like, I am believing that I can, overcome these lies. And I do feel like there is a new thing out there for me, just kind of dig in on that a little bit. What would you share about that?
Yeah. So what that automatically makes me think of is the part in Dirt where I talk about transformation hurt. Transformation hurt. It hurts us, of course, but it feels like it also hurts the people and the places that raise us, that it can feel like a betrayal of the people and places that raise us. And I talk about this, inspirational quote that always gets thrown around of like, just when the caterpillar thought her life was ending, it is then that she becomes a butterfly. And like all I could ever think when I heard that quote was, I bet it hurts the caterpillar.
Mm.
I bet it hurts the caterpillar. And I was speaking at a conference years ago, probably close to a decade and a half ago at this point. And I said, I'm on stage and I said what I just said there. And I'm giving this big, dramatic interpretation of it. And I'm talking about X-Men style wings,
Yeah.
clawing and scratching at your back as like these protruding feathers burst forth, a literal clawing at these old skins we need to shed to fulfill our propensity to fly. And it was so good and so
Yeah.
powerful and so, yeah. And then after it was over, the sound guy who was named Mike, you can't make that up, came up to me and was like, that's not how caterpillars turn into butterflies, right? And I was like, he said, actually, that's not how, and I was like, oh boy, and he actually me. He said, what actually happens is that if you cut open a chrysalis at the right stage and open it up, what you will find is caterpillar soup. That this thing has to completely disintegrate to self in order to become a new thing.
Mm.
And what's really interesting is that scientists have done studies on migration patterns or food patterns or whatever. And even though this caterpillar completely dissolves and somehow is built back into a new thing, this time, the death to self before the thrill of hope takes flight, it keeps the same patterns and
Yeah.
it, keeps the same migrations or whatever. And
Hmm.
that they have shown that it remembers. It remembers both who it was, even as it becomes a new thing. And so that was really powerful for me, both to kind of just have the permission to become a new thing. It's hard to leave a place without feeling like you're saying there's something wrong with it. It's hard to ask for and dream for more without saying there was always something lacking.
Yeah.
And it has become this permission to become a new thing without feeling like I'm dishonoring where I've been or who I was.
Yeah.
And so I would just say to the person listening that my most bullseye core reader for this book is a hard story person. That's who I dedicate it to in the very beginning, whether that was a hard story when you were little or it's happened more recently in the last few years. And you have spent so much of you've already come so far. Let's just start with that. Like maybe you were the first in your family to go to college. Maybe you're the first to have a home, the first to not have chaos in your finances, the first to parent with secure attachment, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
You are already changing your family tree. You have already done so much that will create ripple effects that go out far and wide you may never fully know.
Mm.
And yet you also feel like you keep starting over. You keep as you are trying to get to your next level, you feel like it just feels so much harder than it should be, and you're in the resistance and all that stuff I said earlier. What I want to say to you is my dad used to always say to me, not about my life, but his own, this is the way it is. This is the way it was. This is the way it always will be. And I love my dad, but he's wrong.
Mm.
He's wrong. This is the way it is. This is the way it was. That may be true in your story.
Yeah.
And you may find yourself repeating patterns of chaos that go all the way back to your littlest, youngest years because it feels familiar and familiar feels comfortable, and we've mistaken comfortable for safe. But just because it's the way it is and it was, it does not mean it's the way it has to be and will be from here on out. You are allowed to become a new thing. And when you become a new thing, it's going to be the kind of change in your family tree. It will be a Sharpie mark slashing through your family tree, a before you and an after you. And the future yous and the yous that come after you, the generations to come, are all standing up somewhere, standing ovation style, cheering for you to get back up one more time, dust yourself off one more time, and keep climbing.
Yeah. So good. So good.
That's what I have for that.
Yeah. I knew it was going to be a good answer. Yeah. It's so good. And so, tell us all the ways we can find you. I know they're going to want to take your quiz. Yes. I actually have a fun add-on with your quiz. So tell them about your achiever quiz and then.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually introduced these 5 characters the first time in my second book, Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots. And then we took them and turned them into an achiever quiz, and they actually carry over into Underestimated to talk about the ways the different achiever types get stuck, play small, get in their own way, are their own worst enemies, and how we actually move forward. And so the 5 types are the performer, who's always on her toes, needs to show not just herself, but the entire world how far she's come, which is what we're both raising our hands. We are performers. The tightrope walker could care less who else is clapping, but they need higher and higher death-defying feats to feel the same amount of good. The masquerader hides in plain sight and shoves other people into the spotlight. The contortionist is our classic people pleaser. They contort because it is easier than to be criticized. And the illusionist in the distance, who believes that all the conditions to begin and they themselves must just be perfect before they can even start. And so if you go to achieverquiz.com, the quiz takes like 2 minutes, 10 minutes if you really overthink it. 10 questions, super light and easy, fun, funny questions. And then in true Mary form, we go deep in the results. So fun in the questions, deep in the results. I'm going to tell you based on your type, how you play small, how you get stuck, and how you move forward from there. And that is at achieverquiz.com. And I have one more thing to tell them, but you said you have something for the quiz. So I'll let you.
Yeah. So I thought this would be a fun idea. Another one of my 2 a.m. ideas. And so I mentioned at the beginning that Mary is my writing coach. And so along with doing a podcast because she said so, I also did a quiz because she said so. And so, and it's been so fun. And so if you like Mary's quiz, achieverquiz.com, you should also go to dreamerquiz.com and take my quiz. And if you take both and DM me or message me somehow that you like, tell me the results for her quiz and my quiz, I'm going to send you a copy of her book Dirt and her book Slow Growth, Strong Roots. Because if you don't have them, you're going to do yourself a disservice. You need to read them all as like a whole thing. You need to just binge read Mary's stuff. And so I thought that would be fun. And
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Do it.
Fun.
Do it, everybody.
So dreamerquiz.com, achieverquiz.com, message me, and I will send you books.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. You're going to pick a winner?
I'm going to pick one winner. Yes.
Yeah.
To be clear.
Yes.
I love you, but I don't love you all that much.
Like, you might want to, the lawyer in me was like, please read small print.
Small print. And also I would send you a copy of Underestimated, but you need to pre-order Underestimated, which I know you're going to say, because you get a bunch of freebies and fun things to go with it that I can't control. So how do they do all of that?
I'm so glad you said that. Nobody seems to know this, like, even though authors, of course, feel like we're constantly saying this. And so I'm going to say it again for anybody who's just maybe hearing this for the first time. You maybe have heard that pre-orders matter, and it's like, oh, okay, because like maybe you want to hit a list or whatever. It is actually much deeper than that. Like, whether or not Amazon will show the book, like, you could look it up and find it, but like whether it recommends the book, whether it like shows up at the top of those recommendations or not, whether it ever ends up on shelves, it's very, very hard to get books on shelves these days. So whether it ever ends up on shelves, a lot of different like marketing decisions kind of get based on how pre-orders go. So if you feel blessed by an author, if you love an author, if you're like, you know what, the world needs more of that kind of like excellence and originality and intelligence among women writers in the world, then the best way to do that is to pre-order. And so to, bribe you to do that, to encourage you to do that. So if you go over to namethefear.com right now, that's the website for the book. We actually have, even if you don't pre-order, we have the whole first chapter up there for free for your people. They can grab it today, start reading right away. If you are there and you decide to go ahead and support the book and pre-order, we have the first 3 chapters available. And even more importantly, when it's out, you will get the audiobook. So it's like getting 2 books for the price of 1. I read the audiobook. So if you've enjoyed hearing me wax poetic, you're going to love the audiobook. You get a lot more of the plays on words pop out in the audiobook because I like emphasize them. And a friend said this is like a 74,000 word Taylor Swift lyric. So there's a lot of double meanings and plays on words in this book. So yes, you'll get the audiobook as a bonus, and you can find all of that at namethefear.com. I'm at Mary Marantz, Marantz on Instagram. Come let me know what your achiever type is and what you thought of the episode and how amazing Ashlee is.
Yes. Make sure you tell her how much you love me. I'll have all these links in the show notes as well too. So be sure you're going to want to know all the things about Mary. She's just like a breath of fresh air, just completely real. Everything you've heard today is how she shows up all the time. And so you're a huge blessing to me. This podcast, like I said, is just a pinch me moment for me. And I just appreciate you. I appreciate your time so much. So
this was so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. All right. Well, we'll see you soon. Thank you everybody for listening again to the Big Ideas podcast, where your big ideas are welcome. You don't need to bring the small ones here. But we love y'all joining us. Thank you again for this fun episode with Mary Marantz, and we will see y'all soon. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in today. Before you go, it would mean the world to me and my family if you would share this episode with at least one person who you think might benefit from this message. And of course, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also follow me at Ashlee Ilg on Instagram to keep up with our adventures and for continued encouragement as you pursue your big ideas. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time.